Previously on Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark, we demonstrated why the question, why haven't dinosaur and human fossils ever been found together, is actually a stronger argument against the evolutionary timeline than the biblical narrative when thought through carefully. Join us now as we'll unpack several objections of a logistical nature that often come up when discussing the idea of dinosaurs on board Noah's Ark, such as how could they realistically fit on board? How could they have possibly gotten along with the other creatures? And how on earth, or sea, could Noah and his family have fed them? In part 4 of Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. A common trope you'll often see when discussing dinosaurs on board the Ark is some type of allusion to them running around terrorizing Noah's family and all of the other animals on board, a la the popular Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movie series. But let's face it, these movies were created to produce a dramatic thrill ride experience and so purposefully portrayed these animals as huge, terrifying killing machines, despite many suspected scientific inaccuracies. For example, the velociraptors were not based on real velociraptor fossils, which are about the size of a turkey, but rather on what's called a Deinonychus, which was about the size of a human. And newer research points away from the idea that velociraptors were coordinated pack hunters, as they were distinctly portrayed, which pretty well shoots holes in the entire plot lines of many of the Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movies. And although T-Rex was once estimated to be able to run up to 45 miles per hour and was shown sprinting after a Jeep in the first movie, a recent study estimating energy requirements for bipedal dinosaurs at top running speeds has downgraded them under half of that to a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. Over the years, I've seen T-Rex described in a wide variety of scientific studies as supposedly having starkly different behavior from paper to paper. One would describe them as slow-moving solitary scavengers, and then another as pack-hunting apex predators. Some would depict them as caring moms and dads, and then others as heartless cannibals in the next. The fact is, we don't know for sure, but basing your opinion about the Bible based on CGI-generated dinosaurs in Hollywood movies is hardly thinking it through carefully. And there's good reasons to disregard the notion that the inclusion of dinosaurs would have made Noah's transport more like Jurassic Ark than the life-preserving craft it was designed to be. But regardless of behavior, the sheer size of some of these creatures we found in the fossil record makes the idea of dinosaurs on Noah's Ark seem to be a stretch, until you consider the purpose for all of the animals to be there. God sent the animals he chose to be on board to Noah, and their purpose was to survive and reproduce after the flood was over. So obviously, God wouldn't have sent Grandma and Grandpa dinosaurs on board. He would have sent the young teenagers, so to speak, more juvenile aged and sized creatures that would be healthy and be able to perform their procreative function easily. And according to recent models of dinosaur maturation, even the largest sauropod dinosaurs were no more than several hundred kilograms in weight by the time they were just over a year old, which could have corresponded to their time of release from the Ark. According to the Bible, Noah's Ark was a safe haven for representatives of all the kinds of air-breathing land animals and birds that God sent. And while it's certainly possible that God made miraculous provisions for the daily care of these animals, it's not necessary to appeal to miracles to explain their housing or care. Despite critics commonly speculating the need for millions of animals on board Noah's Ark, the Bible designates the animal cargo was limited only to land-dwelling, air-breathing vertebrate animals, corresponding to modern birds, mammals, and reptiles, as well as their extinct counterparts. So not every species or current variety of animal was needed on the Ark. Chapters such as Leviticus 11 demonstrate that the created kind, the word min in Hebrew, was a much broader category than our modern term of classification of species. As National Geographic stated in an article about domestic dogs, the term domestic dog refers to any of several hundred breeds of dogs in the world today. While these animals vary drastically in appearance, every dog, from the Chihuahua to the Great Dane, is a member of the same species, Canis familiaris. However, all modern dog breeds can be traced back to wolves, which means wolves were likely much closer to the originally created dog kind that God would have sent to Noah. And all current variations of what we call canines, such as foxes, dingoes, coyotes, etc., have descended from that original pair that left the ark after the flood and spread out around the world. Just like if you were to examine the bones of a Great Dane compared to a wolf, compared to a Chihuahua skeleton, versus that of a bulldog's remains side by side a fox, you'd notice a large range of features and differences in their anatomy, and yet they're all the same kind of creature, the dog kind. Similarly, although scientists often declare that they've found a new dinosaur type, most often all they've found is some variation of the approximately 80 different kinds that we've already found. Ceratopsians, for example, they come in all different shapes and sizes, but the basic body plan is the same. They walked on all fours, had a beak-like mouth, a frill, and a wide assortment of horns. And yet, they were all the same kind of dinosaur. Current baromenological research, the study of the created kinds, suggests that the created kind most closely corresponds to the family level in current taxonomy. Recent studies estimate the total number of living and extinct kinds of land animals and flying creatures to be about 1,500. So even with a worst-case scenario approach to calculating the total number of animals needed on the ark, this would mean that Noah cared for approximately 7,000 animals in total, and that would include the dinosaurs. According to the Bible, the ark had 3 decks or floors. It's not difficult to show that there was plenty of room for 7,000 animals, assuming they required approximately the same floor space as animals in typical farm enclosures and laboratories today. Remember, the vast majority of the creatures, birds, reptiles, and mammals, were quite small. The largest animals like elephants, sauropods, rhinos, and tyrannosaurs were probably only a few hundred pounds of body weight apiece, because, as discussed, even the largest dinosaurs were relatively small when only a few years old. Anti-Bible critics have compared the challenges of caring for the animals on Noah's Ark with that of modern zoos. But this isn't an apples-to-apples comparison whatsoever. There's a big difference between the long-term care needed for animals kept in zoos and the temporary emergency care required on the Ark. This was an extreme one-time struggle for existence event, so animals' cozy comfort and appearance weren't essential, because survival was the primary goal. The common assumption that what we'd term carnivorous dinosaurs and other animals would have had to eat meat while on board the Ark isn't a given. For example, crocodiles and alligators today are thought of as meat-eating predators, and yet, unknown to most people, they commonly eat large amounts of fruit. As a scientific study concluded, while the authors say some of the fruit ingestion may have been incidental to prey capture, evidence shows that other fruit is consumed deliberately and in large quantities. And another NBC article reporting on a study in the Journal of Zoology stated, scientists investigated 18 species of crocodilian, ranging from the American alligator to the fearsome Nile crocodile, and found evidence that 13 of those species devoured fruit of some kind, including a variety of berries, legumes, nuts, and grains. Because early research suggested crocodilians were unable to digest sugars and other plant-based nutrients, scientists previously believed plant materials found in crocodiles or alligators were just incidental, and any fruit was likely just swallowed along with prey. As one researcher said, everyone just rejected the notion that crocodilians eat fruit because everyone supposed they only ate meat. Which just goes to show that what people, even scientists, assume to be true often isn't. And that the common objections heard against believing Noah's Ark is real history, often accompanied by a smirky grin and a dismissive eye roll, should be carefully analyzed before being believed. In fact, there have been many modern examples of animals normally considered to be carnivores that refuse to eat meat, such as a lion known as Little Tyke. She refused to eat meat and was fed solely a diet of various grains, milk, and eggs. Additionally, during times of war or natural disaster when meat was unobtainable, zoos and wildlife parks have utilized various meat substitutes like nuts, peanut butter, coconuts, beans, soy, and other legumes as their protein source feed for the animals. So, even if carnivory was prevalent in the late pre-flood world as is demonstrated by the fossil record, it's still possible that animals that God sent didn't eat meat or were omnivores that could have survived for 1 year without meat. After all, Genesis 1:29 and 30 records that all creatures were originally designed to eat plants in the beginning, before the creation was corrupted. Perhaps examples like Little Tyke are not only a reminder of what the original perfect, very good creation was like, but what it will be again someday. There's no reason to think dinosaurs couldn't have eaten basically the same foods as the other animals. The young representatives of the large sauropods could have eaten compressed hay, other dried plant material, seeds and grains, and the like. And carnivorous dinosaurs could have eaten dried or reconstituted meat, or slaughtered animals such as giant tortoises, which would have been ideal to use as food in this regard, as they were large and needed little food to be maintained themselves. In a world of fast food restaurants and superstores, we might think that idea strange. However, seafarers in the 16 and 1700s frequently brought giant tortoises on their ships as a fresh meat source, because tortoises are very hardy and can sometimes stay alive for over a year without food themselves. Another factor that may have reduced food consumption for both vegetarian and carnivorous dinosaurs is that they went into a state of hibernation or brumation or torpor. Many reptiles today begin to eat less, reduce their metabolic rate drastically, and then sleep for long periods of time when the weather gets a little cooler, virtually eating nothing and waking up for only brief periods to drink before re-entering brumation. Often, the best conditions for this state are humidity, lower temperatures, and low light conditions. And the outside weather at the time of the flood, rainy and thus likely cool, combined with the lower light interior compartments of the Ark, would make ideal hibernation, brumation conditions on the Ark. So, if any of the animals went into brumation, then food requirements would have been severely reduced. However, one, because of the relatively few kinds of animals, which included dinosaurs, needed on board. Two, the fact that juveniles, which require far less food, would likely be the ideal candidates on board. And three, the fact that there was more than enough room for a wide variety of food stores on board. Hibernation isn't a requirement for explaining those common objections. However, there are even more questions about the feasibility of Noah's Ark that are often asked, from water and air requirements to how did Noah do away with the dinosaur doo-doo, so to speak. Join us next time where we'll answer several more questions surrounding how could Noah and his family possibly care for dinosaurs on board the Great Ark, in Part 5 of Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark.